All right. So we're moving on to teaching. We're going to talk all teaching today, and this will definitely lead us into seeing and correcting, because I think teaching, seeing, correcting obviously are a pretty heavy package deal with each other. Um, so I put in the little script from level two. If you guys got a chance to read that, if you didn't, don't stress. I'm going to kind of just go over the major points of it. And then I also put a video, and the video is Eric O'Connor, and he's coaching the competitors course. So the way he's teaching the snatch is a little different. Like you can tell he's teaching it more on the sense of like movement efficiency, making sure they're getting under the bar. And even with like their footwork, like they're not shuffling their feet in and out. So it's like more barbell cycling. Um, so not the traditional class, I would say, that I was able to find, but I could not find a really good video of someone teaching. Um, I even went and looked at some of the level four full classes that they came out with. And there's some little points in times that they do it, but they don't do it ever in a very clear laid out way to where you can watch it and be like, I see their standard process that they're looking for. So that video was the best one, but I don't want you to necessarily like live and die by it. And we'll kind of just talk about and walk through the process toward the end of the call so you guys know like what would be looked for, and you guys can create this like standardized process that no matter what the movement is, you have like a 1, 2, 3, 4 that you do every single time. Does that make sense? All right, let's start to just talk about teaching in general. Did you guys have any takeaways from the level two? I've got two big points, like if we're talking about defining what teaching is for what we do. You guys have anything there before I go? Or make you guys think a little. You need to be able to effectively deliver information, right? The tricky part about us is we're teaching a group class. So we're literally in a room with multiple people, and each one of those people may learn differently. So we need to be able to deliver that information, the mechanics and the points of performances, a few different ways per point to make sure that each person can pick up what we're trying to actually give. With that being said, we're still not going to necessarily be able to hit every single person and have this very clear delivery. So we also have to have the ability to change up gears and do something different, say something different, show it differently, to make sure that everyone does absorb it. So teaching is just purely our ability to take the information that we know and deliver it into them so they move well and they understand what they're doing. Right? Kind of obvious there. If we're going to do that, what's something that is crucial for us as coaches and trainers to have down like the back of our head? If you're going to
Points of
teach me,
performance.
yes, the points of performance. So if you're going to go in front of class and you're going to teach the air squat, you should know those points of performance. Like I woke you up in the middle of the night and asked, it should be something that becomes very, very second nature. And I know some of them you're like, oh, you got to think through. You guys know it. I would say you probably just maybe have to solidify it. So it's like boom, 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 and you rip them off. If you can get to that point, knowing those points of performance and like those movement mechanics, that's your roadmap to your teaching plan and how you're going to deliver that information, right? So you have to know that. So if someone's teaching something and they just don't have the knowledge, then we automatically know that their ability to teach is going to either be partially incorrect or partially incomplete. We want to avoid that. Having the knowledge of those points of performances. Let's talk about the air squat. Right, I'm getting ready to teach a class the air squat. What's going to be our first step?
Setup.
Yeah, your setup. Right, air squat's pretty easy because we really only have to worry about the feet. If there is going to be cases that people aren't standing tall, so I would still say, starting standing all the way, your feet are going to go shoulder width apart, and there's your starting position. So setup, right? What's something else that needs to happen first?
Butt back down.
Before that,
Demonstration of the movement.
demonstration.
Oh,
Yeah, I would say you can go one of two ways here. You can either we take it for granted it's an air squat. We hope everyone knows what that looks like by now. But it's still a part of it. We're just using it as an example. We can either demonstrate the air squat and then I can set them up, or I can put them into place and then I can demo. Either one is fine. I don't think you can be hard on yourself or go right or wrong. I would say your flow of class and your stylistic approach, let that be whatever direction it happens. So yeah, show them what it's going to be, what the movement is. We set them up and put them in a position. Even for something like the air squat, when we say feet shoulder width apart, we still need to scan the room because there's going to be somebody that's standing with the feet together and there's going to be somebody that's standing in like a sumo. It's still going to happen on a daily basis. D, after those two things, we're getting ready to do squats. What would come next? What's the first thing that happens? You already said it.
Butt back and down.
Butt back and down. So one of our points of performance is it's called line of action. Our hips need to travel back and then they need to go down. It's the first movement that happens. So when I like to layer in and teach these points of performances, I like to layer it with the order that it's going to occur, right? So I'm with the group. I show them an air squat. I set them up and say, on these first reps, guys, I'm going to have you guys focus on your butt going back and then go down. So now I just gave the group one of the points of performances. They saw what it looked like. I told them what it looked like. And now it's also giving me the roadmap for what I'm going to look for, right? So when we go static, I'm just going to adjust feet. We go dynamic. I gave them the focal point of their butts going to go back and down. I'm going to look for people's butts going back and down. Now, the more comfortable you get, you can look for that. And then you have a second time of a static that you may be holding them in the bottom of the squat. Maybe you don't hold them in the bottom of the squat. Maybe you literally do a quarter squat, but you focus on that movement. That would be okay as well. And then you have time to now, cue a second time in those bottom positions, right? But it gives you the cheat code. You gave them the focal point and you the cheat code to what you want point of performance wise and what you're going to look at now. Right? However many people in class, however many reps you're going to do, you don't have to over torture them. I would say I would leave that up to you. They usually say at least the number of reps of like participants, and it's like I think it's like 2 times that. But I'm going to be honest, if you're teaching day to day, and I've got 10 people in class, and they're saying 2 times the reps per progression. Like we did 100 air squats by the time we're done with points of performance. That's way too many. So do a handful. Maybe you hit certain people, make sure that you're doing in the static because that keeps people engaged and then move to the next one, right? So we've got one down. You saw what they're doing, you coach them. What's another one to focus on? Another point of performance.
Knees lining up with their toes.
Yeah. So next thing to focus on, and sometimes you can layer in 2. So on this one, I would probably layer, not even that yet. I would probably go with the heels just because
that makes sense.
The butt back and down really helps with the heels being down. And then the knees out also helps with the heels, especially when you get the stable foot. So I would probably like double layer it and either on the butt back and down, either go butt and heels or on the knees out, go like knees and heels. So now they have the second focal point where your eyes going, feet and knees, right? And you have that going on. Let's say we do 5, 6 reps there. Give me another one.
Weight in the heels.
Weight in the heels. What's another one?
Chest up.
Yep, chest up, right? Our neutral spine.
Yep.
So I know all of us on this call have used that, like keep your chest up, right? And if you were going to give it a grade, how many times does that work really well? I would give it probably like a D. Probably 60% of the time people fix it. Give me something else. Let's say you're saying, okay, guys, on these reps, we're going to keep our chest high. Give me another cue to get that done. Because chest up is...
Sorry.
Go ahead. I like
Show me the logo on your shirt.
Yep. Keep it so I can see the logo on our shirt. What's another one? 2 haven't worked now. Yeah, raise your arms. That could be a good cue. Sometimes people only move the arms and the torso never moves, so that happens occasionally, and they're just struggle busting their shoulder flexion, right? Yeah, make sure the eyes are up. I love, don't let your shoulders go in front of your toes. That one is like freaking magic. Think about it, Jose. Jose's definitely analyzing this one. So if your shoulders go in front of your toes, what happened? You hinged too far forward. So if you think I got to keep my shoulders behind my toes, it really makes that person fight upright. What else did we just teach them? Obviously, we want a neutral spine, and having the chest up is going to assist with that neutral spine. But we taught them
heels.
No, we taught them a movement theme also. We taught them balance of the frontal plane.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we're doing an air squat, there still is going to be a balance there. And now when I proceed and we go to an overhead squat, when we go to a front squat, a back squat, I've already started to teach that skill. So I have eliminated problems that are probably going to occur by doing that in an air squat. So part of the point in teaching is we're also trying not just to deliver information, but we're trying to eliminate problems and make our life easier before those problems even occur. Does that make sense? So we can kind of like just piggyback these things. We'll say the chest up goes along with neutral spine. So neutral spine for performance. We got one more. So we've got line of action. That's a butt back and down. We've got heels, posterior chain engagement. We've got knees out, tracking over the toes. We've got chest up, neutral spine. One more. Easiest
Hip
one.
extension. Squeeze
And
glutes. Squeeze
just one
glutes.
more. What's the other part of that?
Did you say midline already? Midline.
Yeah,
step.
midline with that chest up, midline stability.
Full extension at the top.
Yeah, and
Full range of motion.
full range of motion. So that the hip extension standing all the way up is just part one of two of the full range of motion, right? Getting the hips below the knees and then making sure we stand all the way. I think that's one. Anytime there's a squat workout, it to point out. Because how many times have you seen people that they hit good depth, but then they never actually stand? And then it's like you're fighting with them in the workout. You're like, squeeze your butt over and over and over. And every time they stand up, they're like slightly hinged over. And they're also just wasting a lot more energy. So what I like to do a lot of times is like in my static or in my cues, and when I'm teaching and seeing and correcting and I'm holding them in the positions, we go down and I'm like, this is the depth we're going to maintain. When we stand up, I say, squeeze your butt. Everyone's standing tall. This is where we need to end at. So those are non-negotiables because I think sometimes people just don't actually realize, even though it's common sense to us, that you need to squeeze your butt and actually stand tall at the top, and they stay half hinged. So even the smallest tail on a point of performance, don't take it for granted. Like deliver that information. We had overhead squats last night, and I took them through on a PVC pipe. And my thing for them last night was the non-negotiable for today is full range of motion. And I still had some people I had to battle with, but I think because I laid that groundwork out, my battle wasn't nearly as what it normally is. Because you guys know how it goes on an overhead squat workout. They show you a couple good reps, and then 10 reps in, people are doing half squats, and it looks like Murph all over again. So in this process, you've got air squat's easy because there's no progression. You show them an air squat, you go from there. But in this process, you have very simple things. So push your butt back, then down. You have an object and a direction, right? Wiggle your toes for the heels. Push your knees out. Very simple lines that are these points of performances. So everything should be simple. So if you ever catch yourself like starting to go into this multi-sentence statement, condense and summarize that sentence into one line. Multi-sentences going over people's heads, like they're not going to be engaged and listen. But what I can do is I can raise my arms when I'm keeping my chest out. So on these rep guys, keep your chest up and raise your arms, or keep your shoulders going in front. It's a very simple task to immediately apply. So very simple. If it was a progression, and we'll do a practice one on a progression, I'm going to have a visual for each of them. And then I need to have that like verbal simple line. So I have two methods of communication. And sometimes I'll change my verbal and sometimes I'll over exaggerate my visual depending if people need to pick it up or having a hard time explaining. Does that make sense? Let's practice one for, what's a complex lift you guys want to go through? What'd you say, Jose? You said something.
Sumo deadlift high pull.
Sumo deadlift high pull. Okay. I would say that's an easy complex lift to go through. All right, sumo deadlift high pull. First, what's the progression? I know it. I'm asking y'all.
The stand feet outside of your shoulder.
Right.
I'm
What
talking.
would be, go ahead, Elise. What's the next? What's the next step? Like the actual progression of sumo deadlift high pull. What's the CrossFit progression?
So it's the deadlift
Sumo
to shrug,
deadlift.
deadlift to high pull. Yeah, sorry, sumo. And then deadlift to
Yep.
high pull to emphasize the hip extension before the arm pull.
Yeah, and you can even do like to emphasize that more. You can do deadlift shrug slow, and then you can do a deadlift shrug fast. I've seen that before. So that's the CrossFit progression. You don't always have to live by the CrossFit progression. Okay, they work, they do really well, but you can get creative with that. So don't feel like you're always stuck in that. Because if I'm always stuck in that, then my class is going to become a little redundant sometimes, especially if I have the same people every day at 6:30. So like you could change it up. I could just do a high pull from the top down. I could do maybe like a high hang to teach the extension before and then go into a hang. Like I could get creative like that. But let's do the traditional one just for this sake. What's the first thing I do? Standard process should be exactly the same.
Demo.
I'm going to demo the sumo deadlift high pull. Right, this is what we're doing, guys. We don't do it very often, so there's probably people in class that have no idea what that is. Demo your sumo deadlift high pull. What's the next thing I do? Jose said it earlier.
Stance and grip.
Stance and grip. Okay, I'm going to widen them out. I'm going to give them some instruction on where to go. I'm going to bring their hands in, and then I'm going to show them what the setup looks like. So, guys, we're going to widen our feet out. Everyone gets there. We're going to go narrow on the bars. I always like to give them like use your thumb as a tape measure and then go ahead and rack that thumb. You can hook grip if you even want to. If you want to get used to it, it's a good time to get used to it. And then from there, I'm say the setup's going to look like this. In the setup, I'm going to give them something to think about. So I'm still going to give a teaching point for the setup. So I may say when we set up, I want the bar lightly against your shins, right? What am I starting to teach there? Frontal plane, right? Bar path. I may say that. I may say I want the shoulders to be slightly in front of the bar when you set up. So now I'm setting up their hip angle. So I'm giving them something to think of before they do it, right? So we gave setup. I showed them what the setup is. What's the next step? I'm going to be very technical here.
The deadlift. I mean, you demo the deadlift.
I don't even have to do that yet. We can just practice setting up. So I think a lot of times we'll skip that part of practicing just with the setup and we go right to a dynamic movement. I can literally just say, hey guys, we're going to set up and hold that position. And I just have them do that. I'm going to give them breaks. I'm not going to just hold them there forever. But hey, let's set up. Give me your best setup. I'm going to give some cues. So likely things you're going to see there is shoulder blades in your back pocket. You're going to have to adjust the hip angle. So either butt up to the sky or lower your butt and probably wiggle your toes. Those would probably be the main faults that you end up seeing. So I can literally just have them practice the setup and then give them a break and then go into the deadlift, right? I gave them a focal point of the setup. So maybe, let's say my focal point for this one was bar against the shin. Now we're going to do the deadlift. Give me a focal point on the deadlift, first progression.
Keep the bar close to your legs. Save your legs.
I can build on that. So the first thing could be, hey guys, we're going to shave our legs on these reps. Now there's a few things I can do with the deadlift. That doesn't mean that I can only do one set of the deadlift and then I have to move on. I can do 2 sets of the deadlift. Maybe we do 5 deadlifts with the focal point of let's shave our legs and we work bar path. And then I give them a break and I'm saying, okay, we're going to do a couple more. Don't ever say a number. I've made that mistake. We're going to do some more deadlifts, guys. This time I'm going to have you focus on, give me another one.
He's out.
Yeah, knees tracking. Think about when we pull from the floor in a deadlift and an Olympic lift. What
I was
does
going to
that?
say Chest and legs, chest and,
go together.
yeah,
Hips.
thank you.
Yeah, so that would be another great focal point. With that focal point, I can cue them, hey, we're going to lift off slow, and then we'll speed up once we leave our knees. So I can even give them like a cadence for it. So now we're really focusing on the hips and shoulders rising together, which is also going to translate into other movements. But we have that path to where the knees are going to now automatically start to clear, and it's going to go hand in hand with our first focal point that Deanna gave us with the bar path. Right? Because if the hips go up, we start to lose bar path, it's going to get out in front, or if the shoulders open up and the hips don't go with the shoulders, the knees stay in the way and they have to hook around the knees. And now, even though we're shaving our legs, we've still lost bar path. So that's a great one, Elise. Love that. That's one I always use. You guys can do that one and not have people stand up all the way. You can have them just take off. They stop right above their knees, and they should be in that hang position still. That's a really good checkpoint in a way that you can add a second static position to coach in by having them stop there and not stand all the way up. Because we can also assume a lot of people have deadlifted, so they know how to just squeeze their butt at the top. All right, done with deadlifts. We did 2 rounds of that. What's the next one? Deadlift shrug. Focal point on deadlift shrug. Why are we doing that progression?
Full hip extension.
Before shrug.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to stand before those shoulders go. So that's going to be my focal point. I want you guys to squeeze your butt before you shrug your shoulders. What's another way of saying it?
Stand tall before you shrug.
Get as tall as you can before you shrug. Get creative with it. As many things as you can think of, say it if it's going to work. You're going to look for that. That's your piece of the dynamic. We're going to make sure people stand before the shrug and the arms start to move. So there's your focal point for yourself and seeing. What's something else you can do with the group that makes people, so you have cues that are going to go to an individual, and then you have cues that are also for the class and for the group. And let's say I have somebody that I verbally cued them, they're still purling early. I visually cued them, still pulling early. I changed the verbal cue, they're still doing it. So what do I have to do now? I have to do a tactile, right? I have to get hands in. So I'm going to have them stand tall, and I put my arm or my hand right above their shoulder, and I'm like, you have to find my shoulder before you shrug. I don't have to do that for only them. I can call the entire group, have my hand on this person's shoulder, and tell the group, I want all of you guys to imagine my hands there with patience. Now I'm going to be very engaged with this individual, but now I just gave a second focal point that there could be another person or two in the room that's still struggling with the timing that I may have fixed the problem before I even get to them. So start to practice getting cues in, especially when you take the time and you're going to do a tactile. Give the whole group the imagination of you being with them as well. And now you haven't ignored them and focused on one person to fix them. You're fixing your person you need to fix, but you're still engaging and coaching the group. So it's like we're balancing these individual feedbacks and group feedbacks back and forth, macro and micro of cueing. Finish the deadlift shrug. We're looking for timing there. And then we go to full sumo deadlift high pull. Right? On those full sumo deadlift high pulls, I would just focus on people continuing to stay close to the abs. And I would probably add in like a focal point of let's brush our hips and let's not smack our hips. So it's not they're still working on their timing before they bend those arms and shrug, but now they have just another little layer that we can focus in on that's going to also help with bar path, right? And now we're sumo deadlift high pulling. You have the rest of the class seeing correct things there too. Do you guys see, and is it clear how you have a movement and then every step of the way, there's an intent for those steps? That makes sense?
Yes. I also think that showing them how to bring it down would be important, because there's usually when they do some of the high pulls, they're cycling them.
And they stay, you have someone that's hanging out up here and they're just burning themselves.
Or they just like don't go down first and then hip hinge.
And they mash it uneven, like.
And they start to teeter. That's why I like to use the thumb Like take a half second, measure yourself out, look at the knurling and see. And then I know you guys have had people that are newer, and you're like, dude, your grip is off, and they're like this on the bar, and they're like, is it? And you're like, dude, the one finger is 10 inches into the knurling and the other one's not even on the knurling. What do you mean? Like, it's not even close. So definitely take the time, like even before you start moving, to check feet and check hands. That's why we do that. Because there's always going to be somebody that's off, even though you taught them how to find it and you showed them how to find it, someone's going to be off. And then when they're not off, 3 reps in, they're gone from their snatch grip back to a clean grip. And you're like, I never, like, when did that happen? So it'll continuously happen through the reps as well. Um, with teaching, I think it goes hand in hand that we don't have to be hounding people the whole time, but everything we do has an intent behind, right? And that intent may be something that you verbally relay and you tell them, or that intent, like you don't necessarily have to share every step of the way, but we're doing things for a reason, right? And this starts in our general warm up. So like if we start to correct and fix things in the general warm up, now when we add load and intensity, because the intensity may be holding a position when you're doing the specific, that could go from 0 to very intense for somebody. You've already started to mold them how you need to mold them. Let's do one more walkthrough. Well, let's pick a more complex movement. So Sumo del Hypo I like because there's some timing aspects to it. Let's pick something with a progression that still has the timing aspect.
Jerk.
All right, jerk. Let's push jerk to just make it a little simpler. Push jerk. Who wants to walk me through the push jerk plan? You can do this group too.
Someone that's not me, please.
Well, so set up first. So feet underneath the hips, hands are just outside the shoulders. Full grip on the bar. Elbow is slightly in front. So going through the progression, you start off with a dip and hold. You're looking for vertical torso and just the knees going forward, not a muted hip, so that the butt goes just straight down. Dip and hold, then you stand. Then you go to a regular dip or with no hold, you just dip. So you just practice on the knees breaking and extending, getting full extension of the hips. And then from there you add in the arm. Oh crap.
Oh shit, I know. You caught it. Okay.
I had barbell in there. Yep, my bad. X that
Okay, so what
barbell.
you did real quick before you keep going, I think that's gonna be your discretion. So let's say we have push jerks in class, right? I have to make my mind up, and most of the time we know people in our class. Am I just gonna kind of skip ahead and do a push jerk only progression? Or do I have some people that maybe I'm gonna bring this back a step and I am gonna teach the first dip and drive like a push press? So I do think that's gonna be your call on that. So like that's why I say, we have these progressions, but you can get creative and change things. So I don't think if you started them with a barbell, I think you could do that whole thing you just did, and then maybe you go, okay, let's set the barbell down, and now you start to work on the jump and land. So is it right? Is it wrong? No. If you have an intent and it's effective, awesome. So don't worry about it being like always the exact one that CrossFit gives us.
Well, I saw something on Instagram that I actually really liked. To really focus an emphasis on the hip extension for the jerk. You keep the barbell on and you literally like you dip and drive, but like you don't
Don't
press. You
press.
just feel, yeah, you just feel the barbell float. Just to see how high the barbell goes just with your hips.
I use that when I'm teaching push press to new people. I don't let them press. The only thing I would say is be super careful because if you fuck this up, someone smashes their chin.
Yeah.
If they do it really well. So I always tell people go ahead and cheat and let's get our head out of the way. That's the only thing I would add in, just to be careful if you guys do that. But it is a great tool for teaching timing on that initial drive. I do love that. So we got push jerk. Let's say class is people and they've done a push press before. You're still going to have people that tilt the torso, right? And we are going to have them do a jump and land. no barbell. It was literally focusing on the dip and drive in their landing. What's a focal point?
Butt back.
So the actual land itself, right? Making sure the butt goes back and down when we land, and them understanding that the first dip and drive is not a huge butt back, but when we land, it's a squatty motion. So that's a great focal point. With landing with the butt back, what's something you can add in that can make that better?
Show me the
Knees
logo
out.
on your chest. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
knees out when you land. Show me the logo too, because some people do get a little egregious occasionally with it. What about stomping the feet? Let's put our feet down hard, right? We're working on the landing. Let's make sure we're solid footed in the landing. So butt back, and you're going to stomp down hard. So that can be a great focal point for the jump and land. What's another focal point for the jump and land?
actually jump.
The jump itself, right?
Yeah.
There's people that jump off the ground and they never squeeze their butt and they stay a muted hip. So it could be a focus on let's over exaggerate our butt squeeze. Like let's jump. Like, and if someone jumps high, like it's okay. They're not about to do it with the barbell. Like let them jump high if that's what translates over to them. At least taught them the dip and drive with the barbell. So those are rocking, right? We've done the jump and land. What's next?
So if you could do with the punch without the barbell. So the jump, punch, then land, and then having an active shoulders. And
Yep.
then after doing that, then you can add the barbell,
pusher.
just making sure getting the kid the chin up
chin.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, with the hand, purely just the time piece, right? We just need to make sure the jump happens before they punch. I think that's one that's a really good over exaggeration point. So when I demo it, I jump in the air, I'm floating, and then I punch. So there's a very clear 1-2 that happens to them. And I'm over exaggerating it even more so they can see it because they're not coaches. They don't know what to look for, right? And then I tell them the same thing. Like, it's okay if you have a slight delay. Like, I'd rather them be slightly delayed than super early. So over exaggerating, that's good. And then when you give them a barbell, that delay goes away immediately. Like, I've never seen somebody that has jumped a foot in the air with the barbell on their shoulders. It hasn't happened yet. I'm not saying it won't, but it hasn't yet. To go to full push jerk. Give me some static cue points. They got a barbell in their hand now. Now they're jumping, they're landing. You're holding them in the land. Give me something you can look for.
Active shoulders.
Active shoulders. We're pressing up into the sky. There's a great one. Give me another one.
Ribs down.
Yeah, ribs down is a pretty good one, actually, right? Making sure they're not super flared out. If they are flared out, shoulders are tight. You can widen the shoulders maybe a hair, see if that helps. But yeah, still staying tension. I think with push jerks and jerks in general, people lose that midline tension and they're like a freaking car salesman balloon flying everywhere. What'd you say?
Balance of the frontal planes. Make
Yeah,
sure
I'm
that
gonna.
their head or like their ears are against their biceps or something.
Yep,
like
I'm gonna look where that bar is. Does that bar line up into their midfoot or their heels? I think a lot of times coaches go to a cop out, just punch your head through, punch your head through, and sometimes they're balanced. Sometimes they don't need to put their head through more, and they're in a good spot. So you want to look at that whole thing before always cueing punch their head through. Now, if they're doing their jerk and they're like this, that's a different case. Like obviously that's a very glaring one. But actually look to see where that barbell lines up. That's a good one. One more. Two more, I could say.
Butts back. Landing with the butt back.
Yeah, we can just go back to the mechanics of the squat. Is the butt back and down? Yes, no. Is the knees over the toes? Yes, no. Are we in our heels? Yes, no. So it gives you all these things. What I like to do is I give myself a game plan. So if like we're landing there on my first maybe 3 to 4 reps, I'm gonna look for maybe butt back and down only in my statics, right? And then my next 3 to 4 reps, I'm gonna look for the balance of the frontal plane, and is that bar lined up? So I try to give myself these stages, and the reason I do that is I get overwhelmed if I'm trying to find everything at one time. It's too much, too fast. So if I do compartmentalizing stages, and each of my focal points that I taught is the thing that I look for and see, So I have my dynamic homework every time. I'm telling myself what I'm going to look for as I'm going through class, actually. And then on my statics, I just give myself a plan that I'm going to look for the first handful of reps here, next handful of reps here. And then you'll still have things that are glaring that you're still going to pick up instantly and see. Like we're all good at that because we've been watching movement a long time. So it gives you these exact roadmaps rather than just going through motions. And then because you're trying to see everything, you end up seeing almost nothing. Does that make sense? So we tell them what we want them to do. We show them what that looks like. They do it. And while they're doing it, we're checking it. That's the tell, show, do, check process. That's the exact process that when you go to a level 1, they're going through with you. When you go to your level 2, they're looking for you to do. If any of y'all eventually go to your level 2, I think a few of you guys may do that at some point in time. Know your progressions, know why you're giving the progressions, and have these points you're looking for. If you go into that level 2 knowing your progressions, looking for these points and having some good cues, and you go tell, show, do, check, you are going to make everyone at your level 2 look like an idiot. You're going to make it look like they've never coached before. You'll crush it. And that's just what we should be practicing and doing on a daily basis. And it's the same thing that I have to go execute, or eventually, now we got a couple level 3s, eventually maybe go execute like on a level 4, right? It's the same process. And that's our process of delivering the information, mechanics, and teaching. And then our process that starts to bleed into seeing and correcting. All of it goes together. Does that all make sense? You guys have questions on like any of that stuff?
I have a question. I was like, Elise and I were talking over the weekend about sometimes giving these little nuggets of information, like when is it okay to give these extra little nuggets? Because like obviously when you're in a progression, you want to move quick and you don't want to be giving so much information. But like when it's, let's say when it's in a workout and you are trying to give them quick actionable cues, but they're not understanding, like, do you just move on or do you give them those nuggets so maybe they understand, but then you're stopping their intensity? So like, when is it okay to give them those extra nuggets and like actually teach them why we're asking them to do something rather than just being always short?
So, okay, so when we're doing our specific, you have to consider that they're not the only one in the room going through it. So we do need to be, I would say, fairly brief and efficient on delivering our cues and delivering our information. Because if I start having a conversation with you of why I want your butt higher in your deadlift, and Elise, Jose, Gina, Justin, and Cayman are in the bottom of a deadlift, they're like, what the fuck, dude? Like they're over here struggling and dying, and I'm sitting there having a conversation. So it's like I'm gonna adjust them, and if I can remember to come back to you and tell you in a time that's better, I would do that 100%. While we're in a Metcon, I also don't want to take away from your intensity, but I do want you to balance threshold training. So what I do, and it depends on the culture of your gym. Like if the culture of your gym is not used to being huge relentlessly in a Metcon, when you start talking to somebody, you can tell because they'll just stop moving, and it's almost like they're annoyed. And so what I'll do, like I'm at a new gym now, so they're getting used to being cued in a Metcon, which they are not used to before. When I go up to them, I'm like, don't stop moving. I tell them immediately, I don't want you to stop, but slow down a little bit and work on brushing your abs more with the bar. So I'll just slightly slow them, but make sure that they keep going, right? You still need to be actionable there. I think the only time that you are going to stop somebody in a Metcon is if they're starting to really compromise their safety and they're just throwing things out the window. But remember, threshold training is sometimes we need to slow things down to maintain mechanics. So like I tell people, hey, slow it just a little bit and focus on this. Depending what the situation is, like I had a guy last night doing overhead squats and it was sets of 30 overhead squats and you had a penalty if you missed. I wanted him to tempo his overhead squats because when he slowed it down at tempo, he kept a full range of motion and kept his mechanics. But as soon as he sped up, he was losing his balance and mechanics are going out the window. So instead of making that guy do a slow tempo 30 with a penalty, that would be a jerk move. I had him do 10 tempo overhead squats around so he could focus on his mechanics and not be heavily penalized because I gave him something to focus on. So you can get creative in the Metcons with different people if you need to as well. I think the time for more nuggets and like let's have conversations and let's be nerdy and talk shop when you're doing a skill session. And like Mayhem has a skill session with ropes today, and it gives us a little bit of time to practice different jump rope versions. And then we go on a clock, and the clock is a 30-second practice, a 30-second rest. And you have these down times. In those down times, talk shop, talk nuggets, give those things. When we're lifting heavy and having heavy days, give those things. Use those rest periods that we'll have automatically programmed for conversation. Doing Mayhem and a strength and metcon is a little different because class does have to move faster. So I have to make use of those gaps to deliver that information. If you're doing CAP and you're doing more traditional CrossFit and you have one piece, you have one heavy day, you have one metcon, you are going to have your specific warm up for that metcon. You're going to practice these movements, and then you're going to have maybe 10 or 15 minutes of practice time, right? No matter what the movement's going to be. And you can put that on a clock to control, but there's this downtimes. Take advantage of those downtimes for like those nuggets. Did I answer your question pretty well?
Yeah, that's what I thought. But I know sometimes, when something is happening fast and that they don't understand what I'm telling them, I give them more information just to see if they understand it. But then I realize I'm taking away from their intensity, like if it's in a workout or something.
And I think the information, like if you can get them that information before they're in the workout with intensity, like that's what I ideally do want to do. Like I don't want to have a combo, obviously, in a workout. And if we are going through a specific warm up, and I'm taking you guys through deadlift, and your mama told you lift with your legs, not your back, and you're going by your mama's words, and all of your deadlifts, you're pushing your butt way down, and you're turning it squatting, which now our knees are in the way. It's going to mess up our bar path. It's going to take away from our power. And I'm trying to get you to raise your butt and you get some tension in your hamstrings and make it look like a deadlift. And you're just being a little stubborn. I can have a second where I talk to you, but I'm not going to do it while I'm holding y'all in a position. So it might be at the end of the rep, and I might be like, all right, guys, stand your barbell up. Let's take a breather real quick. And in that real quick breather, I may take 20 seconds to just chat with you. And like, we know how it feels when a coach is holding you in a position. It's hard work. So like, I don't mind as an athlete if I have a 10 to 20-second quick breather in the middle of a progression, especially if I'm using a barbell. Like, it's okay to do. You can also give them a task to do. So a lot of times when I'm doing, like let's say a ring muscle up progression is a good example because I only have a certain amount of low rings, right? So I may have two groups going, and let's say someone's not getting it, and I need to maybe spot them a little extra. I'll swap groups and be like, group, when you're off the rings, go ahead and give me 10 downward dog to cobras with 2-3 breaths in between. So you can also give the groups like something to do, like that's basic, and maybe it's just an extension of their warm up and things like that, while you take the time and I like spot somebody's hands or whatever it's going to be. Does that make sense? So you can throw little things in like that. So buy yourself enough time to give a nugget or help somebody a little additionally.
So one thing, in best hour of their day, they have actually one clip, like, I don't know, 1 minute about it. That he's saying, look at him, how he's going to provide information. He's keeping everyone, talking about everyone. He gets closer and closer to a member that's doing pull-up bars, but he's not, I don't know what he's doing wrong. And he waits, he keeps talking to the class and he waits
for he catches them in the transition.
When he stops to catch some air, he's like, next one, I want you to think on this, and then he moves. So yeah,
that's perfect. I do the same thing. Like if it's something that's not egregious, like anytime it's a safety risk, we need to step in, right? But if it's something that you just start to see someone struggling, they're going to drop the barbell. They're going to come off the pull-up bar. Those lulls are good, like conversation times, because they're not jumping right back up anyway. Like how many people do we know that's doing single fast toes to bars? Like they do 2 or 3, they come off, they get chalked, they put their hands on their knees. So the navigation, that brings me to a navigation point. Your movement is so crucial to your coaching. And remember, your movement is coaching by itself, even without you saying something. If I layer in a point of performance and then we're going through the workout and you see me coming, what do you guys do when coach gets close? Kind of button up a little bit. So your movement and your presence by itself is also correcting, even though sometimes you're not saying or showing anything. But yeah, that's a great point, Jose. Like get into positions so you can be effective, um, rather than, especially in a Metcon, music's loud, you're dying. I don't know my name. I'm just trying to breathe. Like I need to find a chalk bucket, and a coach is like yelling at me a cue across the room. I'm probably not going to pick it up. Like they need to be in the vicinity of me to correct something. Um, any like questions, other thoughts on that? Anything related?
I had a thought. I'm wondering if maybe they talk about this in like level 2 or beyond, but because in level 1 we learn how to teach the what and the how of the movement, but we never get into the why. It's like, what's if I had an athlete come to me and say, why are we doing overhead squat? What's the purpose of it? And understanding it's like shoulder stability, squat mechanics, where you get the benefit of the posterior engagement of the squat, um, stabilization from the lat, so you can build some lat endurance, like that kind of stuff. Does that show up like later on, like the
Level
why
two,
groups were
level two is
implemented?
going to be level two is going to be very, very coaching oriented and focused. So like what we just talked about, like those processes and like how to lay those out and effectively deliver them is what level 2 is. They're not going to say like, oh, we want a deadlift because we want our, glutes to get stronger and our hamstrings, or, overhead squat because it's going to provide shoulder stability. They're not going to give you that. But if you notice, like in the little section of level 2 in those 2 pages that I read the focus, there's a part that talks about, it talks about knowing the mechanics of the movements and the points of performance, but you also need to start learning and like finding information out on like anatomy and physiology, because form and function goes together. And like we've talked about root causes on this call before, like why might be somebody in the heels? It could be in the heels because their hip isn't going back and down, for an example. Um, so like in the level 2, it's going to be so focused coaching heavy that there's not going to be like this why of why do we do these certain exercises. Those whys are going to kind of come down to the individual trainer on continuing to educate themselves, reading journal articles, the online courses that they have, like different ones are going to be different topics. I haven't taken the anatomy and physiology online course with CrossFit yet, but I've heard it's pretty good from a couple people. So like doing those extracurricular things are something that has to get done. And it's just one of those things that, like, if I go read an article on the overhead squat, like, I ain't going to take home the certification. Like, I don't get to post my certification on Instagram. I'm not doing it for the clout or the fame or the anything. I'm literally doing it so I can deliver my job and my product better on the floor. So that's kind of something that we have to take a little bit into our own hands. Speaking to the choir for you guys, like, you guys are doing it. You're on the call. You read stuff, like all of these things above. Unfortunately, I think you guys are abnormal when it comes to the coaching space in the CrossFit world. Not that many people are doing this, but it's something you definitely have to take it into your own hands. Like no one's gonna feed it to you on a platter. That's why the
Um,
level 3 is so like respected, because they start to ask and get into those details, and you have to know that information. Jose, what were you gonna say?
that the whys, if it's not in the level 1, it's in the journal, because I've got so many people ask
So
why do we
many.
do overhead squat, and there's like journal in the journal that says the overhead squat actually the ultimate core exercise. I think Greg Glassman wrote that one. And also there's like one about handstand push-up when people ask you why should we
There's
do handstand push-up, and it's like, and there's like
there's literally one
about
for everything. If I forget after the call, I'll send the link to the old journal archives. I have it opened on my computer. I never close it. And I'll randomly look things up. And the way I structure my studying in the journal, because it's overwhelming, there's so many categories, there's so many different things, is like if I have a movement in class that I'm not like very, very comfortable with, or it's just been a long time since I went and tried to find new information, I just use my class schedule as my guide. So what am I going to study this week? and I'll just do like literally a class or two a week. Like I don't do it every day. But we had wall walks, and for my gym, I do a technique Tuesday, and I just need to deliver a quick tip really fast on Instagram. So, I went and watched some different videos on wall walks and just talked about efficiency, made sure what I was going to deliver is accurate. Use your class guide as like a guide of like maybe things to look up and give yourself ideas or shit that we don't do. Like tomorrow, we had kettlebell cleans. How many of you are super comfortable? Yeah, at least you're kind of you're a kettlebell boss over here. But like that's one that I would say if that comes up in the class, I've taught it several times. I love doing them. I think I'm pretty good at them if I pat myself on the back. But I'm gonna go do some research to see if there's something I can do a little better in my delivery. So let that be like a gauge for you. And members, you're Justin, you're great with questions. Jose, spot on. Members do ask, why are we doing this? So if someone does ask you, why do we overhead squat? What would you say?
The ultimate core strengthener.
Well,
That's a
we'll go
good
for flexibility. I would mainly go with that
shoulder
one.
mobility, core strength.
Flexibility would probably be like my biggest one because I'm like, dude, I don't see you doing yoga right now. Like, this is a great way for me to keep you mobile and get more mobile if we do it properly and we do it correctly. There's
I
definitely
also
a bad way to do it, but
I also like to throw in there the neuromuscular coordination aspect of it.
yep. I deliver that when I do fundamentals. So when I'm doing my squat like series with somebody that's doing like a fundamental and they're learning for the first time, I explain that to them. I'm like, the overhead squat's a great starting point for your brain to start to communicate to your muscles on where we need to be in space and time. And then if you have any desire to snatch, you gotta have the overhead squat down too. So it really does translate and ripple effect. But yeah, I'll send the old journal link and feel free, like, if you guys go read something and you like it, send it to me. We'll put it on the call and we'll discuss it too. Like there's an article that's like a 6-page article on a push-up. And it's kind of funny because you're like, it's such a basic movement, but then you go read it and you're like, man, there's a lot of stuff that like I knew how to do a push-up, but there's a lot of little nuancy stuff that I didn't really think of or consider ever before that Glassman will say. It just makes you that much more like in tune with what's happening. We got push-ups today for the mayhem people. Deficit push-ups. Any other thoughts?
I do have to say, just like over this weekend, just seeing, all these other people just like warm up or even just do the workout, like our the clean and jerk that we had. There was a group to our left, and there was this tall, skinny girl doing the jerk, and I cringed every freaking time. Her knees collapsed, her elbows, it was absolutely terrible. I
and,
was
and,
like,
and you're doing it at maximal effort.
correct.
It really is scary.
And it's, I know D and I were talking about it, just like we're sitting there, we're like analyzing everyone just going through. It's just something that you can't stop. But like even at competitions, you can just see things and just even though you're
Have
not
you
gonna,
noticed that Nika actually does it a little bit? It's not too outrageous, but it's like I'm like, Nika, outside, your knees outside.
Yes, no, we spoke to her about that. We're like, you got to push your knees out, like you're not activating the power out of your glutes if you do that. She's like, oh, okay. She's
Nika's super coachable, but she's definitely somebody that is fighting against her own body because of some of her mobility restrictions.
Yeah.
Like some of the ways to move, she's her body doesn't necessarily have the proper range of motion, and she's a tough person. So she's popping her rib out in rugby and then coming to the gym and being like, "You think I could do this?" Like she's tougher than the average, I would say.
She played in a hockey tournament the weekend before in Arizona. She did this weekend.
She's
now
tough.
She's doing some like she's in like a rugby hazing thing this coming weekend. So I don't know what that's gonna happen with that, but she's just the Energizer Bunny, man. She just goes.
It really is. But yeah, someone like that, it's tough because you're also it's not just movement and coaching. Like we also need to coach outside of class and get the ranges of motions opened up. Because when we talk about poor movers, like yeah, sometimes it's just straight neurological, and they haven't been taught, they haven't been coached. But sometimes it's like the form and function, the function isn't there as it should be because of restrictions. So that
Right.
does make it a little tougher. And I would say
Right.
like they're yellow lights. Like we need to proceed with caution because they can't move how we
She
need
was
them to
telling
move.
me what's the next thing that she could do, and I said, actually, I think you should take a day off. And
Yeah.
I think she did not like it. I could see
Yeah.
in her face that she did not like that idea.
We
But
told her that too. She's like, no, I'll go to the gym tomorrow. I was like, probably a good idea to.
for someone like her, give her something to do. So it's like, what was the first her reaction? She's like, I'm not gonna listen to you. So like, what should I do tomorrow? Okay, tomorrow you should go to the gym. You should do 3 rounds of a 6 minute sauna in a 90-second ice bath. And then when you're done with those 3 rounds, I just want you to get on the C2 and you're gonna do a zone 2 45-minute bike. We know it's not going to hurt her. We know it's good recovery. It'll also get her fitter. Like give her something so she's like, okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because otherwise she's grabbing a dumbbell and she's doing dumbbell squat snatches and twerking her really even more. So sometimes people just need a little direction. Give them the nudge that they need to. Give them a little bit of what they want, but give them more of what they need, I would say, and like drip
Yeah.
effect them. To your point, Elise, last couple like thoughts I have once you know, you know. So like how you guys are at competitions and you're looking at people and you're just like, ooh, what the fuck is going on? Like, what are they doing? It's very hard to unknow information.
Yep.
So I explain that to people all the time. Like I've been doing CrossFit for a very long time. Like almost half of my life I've done CrossFit. And now being a more mature and a better coach, like I know how important it actually is for me to mechanically move well to start to PR again, right? And that's been my focus. Like my focus is when I do front squats, my shoulders need to stay behind my toes. First, in the first 8 years, I was like, I stood it up. Who gives a fuck? I got it. It was a PR, right? And then one day, all the gains just stopped, and I never PR'd again. So the more knowledge that we can deliver, and I think it's a hard delivery because you have to deliver it in a way where someone doesn't feel offended or feels like that you're mansplaining it to them. The more knowledge we can, it's hard to unknow that knowledge, right? And it starts to make you want to do the right things more often. And that's why it's so important, I think, as coaches that we always strive to continue to pick up knowledge and education. Right? I run this call. You guys know that obviously, but I learn on a weekly basis and things that I already know that I'm going to deliver to you guys. When I reread, when I take notes, it makes me think, and I think I fine tune and I get just a little bit better, talking about it. So even when it's stuff that let yourself go back and re-go through those things over and over and over. And that was whose advice was that? That was Glassman's advice. When you think you got it down, go
Yeah.
back to the basics and pay closer
Exactly.
attention now. And he's let me tell you, is it fun going back to a hollow hold and practicing it? Not really, but he is so spot on. You will learn and pick up more things and more things because your understanding grows, and that's how you become not only a badass coach, but that translates into a badass athlete. And for us, I could care less about going to the games. Not what I'm trying to do. It hurts way too much for me, but it allows me to have the knowledge that I feel I could coach one of those athletes. And I can watch semifinals and be like, what's this person doing? That's so inefficient. Right. And if you want to be an athlete, it makes you a better athlete. If you want to be a coach, it makes you that better of a coach. What I'm going to do, we went over this teaching. I'm going to write out a teaching plan so you can like visually see what that looks like and how I execute that in class. And then if you guys want to, obviously 100% optional, if whatever class you coach next, whenever we have like a heavy day or anything like that, write your lesson plan out. I don't care about time frames. Time frames are the easiest part of a lesson plan. You can write it out and write your teaching plan out and text it to me and I'll like look it over and like send it back. because that's a part of lesson planning that I think it's very overlooked. We think of it always as a timeline that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, but it's really our actual content of delivery that we're going to deliver in class. It streamlines us, it shows our knowledge, and it makes us look like more of a virtuous coach than the person next to us. And then we're the ones, gaining clients and gaining steam and things like that. So I'll write mine out. I'll send it in the group. And then from there, if you guys want to practice and send it to me, I'll look at it and we'll help you out. Any other thoughts, statements before we call today a day?
Hey, Jose, congrats on heard you're a doctor now.
Oh, did you pass?
I passed my week 2 test. I still need to do some. I mean, I could apply to some place like Colorado or states in the inner, but if I want to stay in South Florida, I will have to go through some other stuff. I need to take just basic things like observerships, but I'm in already.
That's
Easier,
awesome.
easier
Congratulations.
stuff than the past. Congrats, man.
Yeah.
You can move to Texas. What about Texas?
That's also a hard one. I also have to take
Texas is a tough one. Interesting. Texas and Florida usually have pretty similar like laws and practices, it seems like. Well, congrats. We're doing pretty good on tests, guys. So who's next? Let me know. All right, I will see
Hopefully
you guys
December would be level 3.
for your level 3.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jose seems to be on deck for the next one. December will be here before you know it. So keep reading, keep studying.
Yep.
Any courses any of you guys are getting ready to take, I don't care if it's level 1, like we just talked about going over basics again. If it's level 1, level 2, level 3, like anything, and you want to kind of get on and like talk about it, because I do think not only just reading and studying, but getting on and talking about it can be very helpful, especially for retention. At least that's how I remember things. I have to verbalize it. Text me. It doesn't have to be in the group. Text me outside. Let me know, and we'll put anything. So if there's anything you feel like you need to retouch on, Jose, for level 3, we'll go back over it, or any course for any of y'all.
Cool.
Other than that, I'll see you guys on Thursday with some movement.
Bye, guys. Have a good day.
See y'all.